What is wrong with Pep Guardiola's team?
We are not fluid. So we were a team like always play with this composure that now we don't have, especially for the amount of games losing. And in the same time, it's normal, but sometimes the spirit or the strength helps you to find, sometimes the game. In this time of games today, it was more, okay, we were there, and we were there. But it's not about this situation. This situation happened many times. I don't have defense, so I'm the boss, I'm the manager. I have to find a solution, and I don't find the solution. So this is a big club, and big club, when you lose 8-10, something wrong has happened. So I said, I can say the schedule is tough, the injured the players, but no,
Alright, so let's look at what City did against Man United. Pep set up in a 4-1-4-1, and Man United set up in a 3-4-3. Normally what Guardiola does is he plays with a back three, and there's a box in the center, and or sometimes a diamond. In that case, if he stuck to those tactics, what would have happened was that we would have had Diallo here, Mason Mount here, and the striker over here. Ugarte and Bruno Fernandes marking these guys over here. It would have been really difficult for City to build up because everybody was man-marked. He was being marked by Mason Mount. So that wasn't going to work. So what Guardiola did was that he changed his tactics. If we have this 4-1-4-1, it was Matheus Nunes. He wasn't the guy who was tucking in. Guardiola was the guy who would jump in and become the double pivot with Gundogan, and Gundogan could at times move forward. So with Guardiola moving forward from the CB to the double pivot position, and Man City now playing with two defenders, Matheus Nunes would now have freedom to roam around. And so when Guardiola moved inside, what would happen was that Diallo would have to follow him. And if you look at Matheus Nunes over here, this is a 1-2-3-4-5 versus a 1-2-3-4-5, and then you got two defenders over here. So that's a man advantage for Man City. And because Diallo is not following him and he's not following Matheus Nunes, he's following Guardiola, Matheus Nunes becomes a free guy and he can move forward with the ball. Because of Guardiola moving into the double pivot and Gundogan over here, Mason Mount and Diallo would be very, very narrow. That is why in these channels over here, Man City will get the ball in open space and they'd be able to create build-up opportunities from the sides. This did work for Guardiola because if we look at the touches, Nunes had 80 touches and Kyle Walker had 83 touches. And so this is the second highest touches. So that means Guardiola's plan was working, yes, as far as the build-up goes. Now once Nunes had the ball up here and Doku over here, one of the defenders had to come in and mark him, because if he didn't, then if Doku got the ball, it would have been a 1v1 situation, and Nunes over here, it would have become a 2v1 situation. And so United didn't want that to happen. Amorim, he was aware of that, so this guy would have to go here. But then a pass over here and it would isolate Doku with Mazraoui in a 1v1. But Mazraoui ended up having a really, really good game. He basically took Doku out of the game. If you have Phil Foden over here, the idea was that he would get the space around here to make these runs. Now the problem is that Phil Foden has been struggling and he hasn't really been making those runs inside the box, and that is why if you look at Man City's XG, Haaland was mostly isolated over here. all alone, and these runs just weren't happening. And because of that, Man City's XG was lower than 1. And that is one of the problems we're going to be discussing on how to solve that, because until we don't solve that, Man City is going to continue having attack problems. Fine, they have build-up and defense problems because Rodri is not there. But another side of the game is they're creating less chances, and we have to figure that out, that why that is happening and how to fix that. Talking about runs, fine, Haaland, he's their main runner, but he had Maguire was just glued to Haaland. Haaland in isolation, these runs just weren't happening. Maguire, he was always on him, so big guy. He had him under control, and that's what most teams have been doing. Haaland hasn't been able to make those runs because all the opponents of Man City have been marking him really, really well. If not with one guy, sometimes with two guys. If you look at Doku, he had over 10 dribbles in this match, but only 4 of them were successful. So as we said before, that Mazraoui was relatively successful. And so once he gets here, what's he gonna do? He's gonna cross the ball, because there's nothing happening from this side. And so when he's going to cross the ball, Haaland is going to be the only guy over here who's going to be able to get to the end of those crosses. There's nothing going on from the far post side where City can actually, create this overload in the box and get that far post positioning to, if, Haaland doesn't get the ball, then this guy from the far post, or these guys over here, they should be in this position over here when that cross is happening, but that wasn't happening. And so Haaland is basically isolated. Maguire, a tall guy, the crosses just weren't going to do anything. And that's been happening in all games, by the way. Now, because United had a very narrow defensive shape, De Bruyne drifting out wide, because he couldn't get the ball over here in the center of the pitch. And because he was drifting out wide, if you drift out wide during the build-up, then nothing is going to happen over here. You're foregoing the attack in order to get, an advantage in possession, and instead of getting possession here, right over here. So then, you're going to build up from this side. And from this side, Bernardo Silva is the guy, but Bernardo Silva doesn't have the speed. Well, I think it's a profile issue, and so one of the things is that you got a dribbler here in Doku, 1v1, fine, he makes that run, he makes that dribble, he crosses the ball. So the first thing is that now you need guys over here, right? And so once you got these guys over here, your chances of scoring increase massively. And so if that doesn't happen, and instead of being in the box, these guys are around over here, Haaland's the only one inside, or this guy's just looking around this point rather than being here, nothing's going to happen on the far post, and that is why, he's just going to be isolated. So the first thing Man City need is a real number 10. Now, the problem with De Bruyne is that, it's the age problem. Fine, he's a great player. He's still creating most of the chances for Haaland and all that. But the thing is, in football, age does catch up. And because he's been injured, he doesn't have that form. And so none of that stuff is happening. These guys are basically roaming around with the ball over here in this area. Secondly, now, with all build-up being done on this side, because of Doku, and because he's a dribbler, you need a runner on this side. So if you have a fast-paced runner who can make these runs really fast, like Rafinha is doing at Barcelona, or Luis Diaz or Cody Gakpo are doing on this side, because Salah is the dribbler on this side, that opens up the game. Over here you got Bernardo Silva, and so once that chance is created for that run to happen in this part of the pitch, no run happens. And with De Bruyne fine, he's a high 8 or a sort of a 10. The 10 has got to be over here. First, you need a guy who can make the run to off balance the opponent, and you got to do it fast. You can't just keep dribbling the ball and let the opponent get into a 5-3-2 sort of a defensive structure. You want to do that before they're in their defensive structures. And so when you get that chance to transition, you got to transition fast. So that is what Pep Guardiola's team is lacking, and instead of going for transition, what they do is they keep passing the ball around, let the opponent get into their structure and do that 15-20 pass thing, and then you don't really have the profiles and you have an isolated Haaland over here. No chance creation happens. So first, you need a number 10. Barcelona, they have Dani Olmo, who drops deep, gets the ball from Pedri, and then makes that pass and then makes that run inside, because they've got a runner in Rafinha, they got Lewandowski, a really strong striker, and then eventually Dani Olmo and Lamine Yamal over here. So they got this like an overload going around here, and so that's why they're scoring a lot of goals. In Man City's case, that's not happening. So first of all, they need to sign that number 10, and the best guy for that is, in my opinion, it's Florian Wirtz or even Musiala, because Musiala is a shooter, so is Florian Wirtz, and that's why either one of these guys, that is going to definitely help out Haaland. And if not, if Haaland's not going to score himself, they're going to, Musiala and Wirtz both have the capability to score a lot of goals. Fine, Man City have Jack Grealish right now, who's Pep is not playing anymore as a winger. He's playing him as a high midfielder. But he's one of those guys who draws fouls rather than shoots for goal. Secondly, what they got to do is, if you have a dribbler on one side, you need to sign a runner. That winger who's got that fast running capability. What used to happen at Man City was you had Mahrez over here and you had Raheem Sterling over here. So if Mahrez was dribbling the ball and you had Sergio Aguero as the striker and De Bruyne even coming in, or Bernardo Silva, Raheem Sterling used to be over here and he had that finishing capacity. Even Leroy Sané. So, Sané could play on both sides and he had a lot of speed. What Man City was doing with those players was they had a lot of people inside the box on the far blind side post, and that is how the goals were coming. So if somebody would cross the ball from here, there would be a striker here, a winger here, all tucked inside in the half spaces, and goals used to happen. They don't have that anymore. Fine, they have Savinho right now, but if you look at Savinho's 1v1, he's a dribbler. So you have a dribbler here and a dribbler here. But Savinho's velocity of dribbling is slow. It's just not the quality Mahrez used to have. This guy, again, is isolated and you don't have a number 10 as well. Now, fine, if you have two dribblers, then what happens is that the midfielders are making these runs here. So you got Foden and De Bruyne, or sometimes Bernardo Silva, but it's not happening, These guys just aren't here. These guys are over here outside the box most of the time. None of these chances are coming, and that's why City's XG is low. If you sign a good 10, then yes, you might not need to sign a winger. Savinho might become more effective. But in case you do want to sign another winger, because Savinho wasn't playing and Bernardo Silva was the guy playing this game, and this huge gap over here wasn't being taken advantage of. If you do, maybe somebody like Ousmane Dembélé, because he's one of those guys who gets that touch, and if there's somebody trying to mark him, it is next to impossible, because after that first touch, it's just like speed. He's always going to beat that guy 1v1 and then make that cross here. But then on this side, you will need a guy who is going to come inside, and Doku doesn't come inside, he stays outside. So you want somebody who's going to come in here and, it's going to look like something like this, because that cross is going to come and somebody has got to put it in, and that's why you need players here. These are the things that might solve Man City's problems. Once Rodri is back, he's the passer who's controlling the whole thing, and then, if there's a counterattack, there is always going to be a tactical foul. And, you know, if the chances aren't coming, Rodri's going to be up here. He's going to be trying to score a goal. So they're missing Rodri. Maybe Joshua Kimmich, you know, he's the sort of player Pep can look at as well. And he's going to be free. That is something, you know, Man City should be looking, because he's also going to be putting those through balls. And then another thing is that, you know, if you look at Kovacic, Matheus Nunes and all these guys are all runners basically. They're not passers. So in the midfield, more than runners, you need passers, right? And Rodri's a passer. I think they're going to sign players in January before they get hit with the charges. And they have to max out their signings in January rather than the summer. But to get Florian Wirtz, Musiala, Kimmich, these guys, I don't think it's gonna be really difficult for them to get them in January.